Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've been working as a mechanic for about 8 years now, ever since I dropped out of college. Money was tight back then, and I had to choose between finishing my degree and keeping a roof over my head. I chose the roof. I was good with my hands and cars made sense to me in a way that textbooks never did. That's actually how I met my ex. She brought her beat-up Honda to the shop where I worked, complaining about some weird noise it was making. She was this bubbly, energetic person who seemed to light up every room she walked into. We started dating pretty quickly after that. For 2 years, I thought we had something real. She had this habit of spending money we didn't have on things we didn't need. Designer clothes, expensive dinners, weekend trips to fancy hotels. When I tried to talk to her about our budget, she'd just laugh and say life was too short to worry about money. She convinced me to get a credit card with both our names on it for emergencies only. Those emergencies happened about twice a week. She treated my job badly too. At first, she thought it was cute that I worked with my hands. But when time went on, she started making little comments. How I always smelled like motor oil, how embarrassing it was when her friends asked what her boyfriend did for work, how I'd never be able to give her the life she deserved. Then came the drunk driving incident. She wrapped her car around a tree coming home from some party I wasn't invited to. Thank God no one else was hurt, but the car was totaled. The insurance wouldn't cover it because of her blood alcohol level. Instead of learning from it, she just shrugged and said, "These things happen." I should have seen the end coming when she started working late all the time. New job at a marketing firm, new responsibilities, new co-workers. One co-worker in particular kept coming up in conversation. This guy from the office who was apparently so funny and smart and successful. When I finally met him at the company Christmas party, everything clicked. The way she looked at him, the way she laughed just a little too hard at his jokes. I confronted her about it 2 weeks later. Found some texts on her phone that made everything crystal clear. Instead of denying it or showing any remorse, she just got angry at me for snooping. Then she started listing all the reasons why I wasn't good enough for her anymore. How I'd never amount to anything. How she needed someone with ambition. How she was tired of dating down. She moved out that same week straight into his fancy downtown apartment. Left me with all the bills, including that credit card she'd maxed out. I was looking at about $15,000 in debt that had my name on it. It took me almost 2 years to pay it all off, working double shifts and eating ramen noodles for dinner most nights. So when I got that wedding invitation in the mail, I honestly thought someone was playing a prank on me. We hadn't spoken in over a year. Why would she want me at her wedding? I asked around with some of our mutual friends, and that's when I got the real story. My friend Jake told me straight up what was happening. He said she'd been telling everyone that I was going to be there because she wanted me to see how much better her life was now. When I asked if he was serious about her wanting me there to rub it in my face, he confirmed that's exactly what it sounded like. He explained that she kept talking about how she had upgraded and wanted to make sure I knew it. Part of me wanted to just ignore the whole thing. But there was this other part, the part that had spent 2 years paying off her mistakes, that was curious. I wanted to see what this upgrade looked like up close. The wedding was at some expensive country club across town. Everything was white and gold and perfectly arranged. I showed up in my best suit, which admittedly wasn't saying much, and tried to blend into the crowd. The ceremony itself was fine. Standard vows, standard readings. But I could feel her looking at me from the altar. Not in a sad or nostalgic way, but like she was checking to make sure I was witnessing her moment of triumph. The reception is where things got interesting. The food was fancy, the drinks were top shelf, and everyone seemed to be having a good time. I was actually starting to think this had been a mistake when she stood up to make her speech. She thanked everyone for being there and said it was honestly the happiest day of her life. She talked about being grateful to be surrounded by all the people who mattered most to them. She went on like that for a few minutes, talking about love and new beginnings and finding your soulmate. But then her eyes landed on me. She said she was especially glad that everyone could be there to celebrate with them. She mentioned how wonderful it was to share this moment with people from all parts of their lives, even their past. Then she said that sometimes you have to go through the wrong relationships to appreciate when you find the right one. She finished by saying she was just so grateful she had finally upgraded her life. The room got quiet. A few people laughed nervously, but most everyone just looked uncomfortable. She was still staring right at me with this smug little smile. I just smiled back and raised my glass, didn't say a word. The speeches continued after that. Her maid of honor, his best man, some relative I didn't recognize. Standard wedding stuff about how perfect they were together and how they'd known it was meant to be from the first moment they met. Then something came over me. Maybe it was the expensive whiskey, or maybe it was 2 years of built-up frustration. But I found myself standing up. I asked if it was okay for me to say something too. The room went quiet again. She looked surprised but not worried. Probably thought I was going to congratulate her on her upgrade. I started by saying I wanted to congratulate both of them. I told them they really did make a beautiful couple, and that I wished them nothing but happiness together. So far, so good. She was practically glowing. Then I said I especially wanted to thank the groom for being such a stand-up guy. I explained that it really meant a lot, that he was willing to pay off all that credit card debt she had racked up in my name. I mentioned that $15,000 was no joke. I added that I had heard he even took care of getting her a new car after she totaled the old one drunk driving, and said that was true love right there. You could have heard a pin drop. Her face went from glowing to ghost white in about 2 seconds. Her new husband was staring at me like I'd just spoken in a foreign language. I finished by saying congratulations again and telling them I hoped they had a wonderful marriage. I sat back down, finished my drink in one gulp, and walked out. Didn't look back. Didn't wait around to see the fallout. Jake called me the next morning to fill me in on what I'd missed. He told me I should have stayed because the whole thing had imploded after I left. When I asked what happened, he explained that her husband had started demanding answers right there at the table. He had asked her why she'd never mentioned the debt or the drunk driving thing. She tried to play it off like I was lying, but too many people knew the truth. When I asked what happened next, Jake told me it got ugly. They started arguing right there in front of everyone, and half the guests left early. The after party turned into this massive fight between the two of them. Apparently, she told him a completely different story about why we broke up. Made it sound like I was the problem, like I was holding her back from her dreams. Never mentioned the financial mess she'd left me with or the fact that she'd been cheating. They're still married, from what I know, but Jake tells me she's never been able to shake the story. People in their social circle all know the truth now. The perfect upgrade image she was trying to project got permanently tainted by one toast. I can't say I'm proud of what I did. It was petty and probably not the most mature way to handle things. I'm 39, and until a few months ago, I was getting around just fine on my own 2 legs. Then this weird issue started with my left leg. The doctors are still trying to figure out what's wrong, but basically my leg just stops working properly sometimes. The pain gets really bad, and I can't put weight on it for very long. My physical therapist suggested I use a wheelchair for longer outings until we get this sorted out. My husband rented me this nice lightweight one that I can push myself around in. I actually kind of like it, gives my arms a good workout. I spent a few afternoons at our local mall practicing how to maneuver around corners and get through doors. Last weekend, my husband and I decided to visit the small zoo about an hour from our house. I figured it would be a good test run for the wheelchair since there's a lot of walking involved. The weather was perfect and I was actually looking forward to it. We'd been there for about 2 hours when my husband said he needed coffee. There's this little restaurant near the penguin exhibit, so he went inside while I waited outside in my wheelchair. I was just sitting there watching people walk by and enjoying the sunshine. That's when this little kid, maybe 7 years old, came walking over with his dad trailing behind him. The kid just stared at me for a minute, then pointed right at my wheelchair. The kid asked why I was sitting in that thing. I looked around hoping his dad would redirect him, but the guy was just standing there with his arms crossed, watching like this was some kind of educational moment. I told him that sometimes people's legs don't work the way they're supposed to, but that wasn't enough for the curious kid. He wanted to know what was wrong with my legs and how they got hurt. He asked if I had fallen down. I was starting to feel uncomfortable. I mean, I get that kids are curious, but I barely understand what's happening with my own body right now. The doctors have run all these tests, and they still don't have answers. How am I supposed to explain something I don't even understand myself? I told him I was sorry, but I was pretty tired and didn't really want to answer more questions right then. That's when the dad stepped forward with this annoyed look on his face. The dad said this was a good learning opportunity for his son. He said the kid was just curious about why some people need wheelchairs. This guy actually thought I owed his kid some kind of educational presentation about my medical condition. I explained that I understood his son was curious, but I wasn't really comfortable discussing my personal medical issues with strangers. The dad got even more pushy then. He said it wasn't personal, it was educational. He said kids need to learn about people with disabilities so they're not scared or confused when they see them. The way he said people with disabilities really bothered me, like I was some kind of teaching tool instead of just a person trying to enjoy a day at the zoo. I told him I appreciated that he wanted to teach his son, but I wasn't there to be anyone's learning experience. He called me selfish and said that since I was in public with that thing, obviously people were going to be curious. Then the kid asked if he could touch the wheels. His dad encouraged this, saying the boy just wanted to understand and I could at least let him look at it properly. I was getting really angry now, but I didn't want to lose it in front of the kid. It wasn't his fault his dad was being such a jerk. I told him no, the kid could not touch my wheelchair. I explained that this was my mobility device, not a toy. The dad got even ruder then. He said I wasn't very friendly and complained that he was trying to raise his son to be accepting of people like me, but I was making it pretty difficult. People like me. I wanted to tell this guy exactly what I thought of his attitude, but before I could say anything, my husband appeared with 2 coffee cups. He asked if everything was okay, probably picking up on my upset expression. I told him I was ready to go see the rest of the zoo. He handed me my coffee and started pushing my wheelchair away from the restaurant. We started rolling away. I could hear the dad talking to his kid about how some people just aren't very nice and that I was being mean because I didn't want to help other people learn. My husband must have heard it too because he stopped pushing and turned around. He asked the dad to repeat what he'd just said. The dad complained that I had been pretty rude to his son who was just asking innocent questions. My husband told him I didn't owe him or his son any explanations about my medical condition. He said I wasn't a zoo exhibit. The dad got defensive and said that if I was going to be out in public with that wheelchair, I needed to expect that people would be curious. My husband shot back that I could actually expect to be treated with basic respect and privacy, just like anyone else. The dad's face was getting red now, and he insisted he was just trying to teach his son about disabled people. My husband suggested maybe he should start by teaching his son that disabled people are just regular people who don't exist for his education. A small crowd was starting to gather, and I could see a zoo employee walking over. The employee asked if there was a problem. The dad immediately complained that we were being really rude to his son. The zoo employee asked him to lower his voice because he was disturbing other guests. My husband explained that we were just trying to enjoy our visit when this gentleman decided I should provide free disability education to his child. The zoo employee looked confused and asked me directly if this man or his child had bothered me in some way. I explained that the child was just curious, but when I politely said I didn't want to answer personal questions about my medical condition, his father got upset and called me selfish. The zoo employee told the dad that guests have the right to privacy and shouldn't be approached for personal information. The dad protested that it was ridiculous and it was just a kid asking questions. The employee acknowledged that, but said, when someone says they don't want to discuss something personal, that needs to be respected. The employee then turned to us and apologized for what happened. He offered to escort us to a different area of the zoo, which we gratefully accepted. We started rolling away. I could hear the dad still complaining loudly to anyone who would listen about how unfriendly and selfish some people are. His poor kid looked embarrassed and confused. The zoo employee walked with us for a bit and apologized again for the incident. He said some people just don't think before they speak. I told him it wasn't his fault and thanked him for stepping in. The employee mentioned that they actually have sensitivity training for their staff about interactions with guests who use mobility devices. He said it was too bad not everyone gets that kind of education. The rest of our zoo visit was much better. We saw the lions, watched the seals get fed, and I got pretty good at navigating my wheelchair on the paths. But I kept thinking about what that dad said about people like me being in public. I'm still the same person I was before I needed this wheelchair. I'm not a teaching moment or a learning opportunity. I'm just someone trying to live my life and enjoy a day out with my husband. My little brother was born with cerebral palsy, which affects his movement and balance. While other kids his age run around playing sports, he uses a wheelchair to get around. Despite his challenges, he's the most positive person I know. He never complains and always has a smile on his face. That's probably why what happened that day made me so angry. I watched other kids stare at him or make cruel comments. Our parents did their best, but they couldn't be everywhere. So I made it my job to look out for him. I started working out when I was 14, not just to get strong, but to make sure nobody would ever hurt my brother. By the time I turned 22, I was 6 feet tall and built like a brick wall. People usually think twice before messing with either of us. That Tuesday started like any other day. I was taking my brother to the park like we do every week. He loves watching the ducks in the pond and feeding them breadcrumbs. It was around noon, and the sun was shining bright. We were walking down Main Street when I noticed an elderly lady struggling to cross the busy intersection. Her walking cane was shaking in her hands, and cars were zooming past without stopping. I told my brother to wait by the bench while I helped the old lady cross the street. He agreed and said he'd stay put. I jogged over to the old woman and offered her my arm. She smiled gratefully and we started making our way across the street slowly. The walk signal was counting down, but I made sure we took our time so she wouldn't trip. That's when I heard my brother cry out behind me. I spun around and saw something that made my blood boil. Some woman with bright pink hair and way too much makeup had just dumped an entire bottle of orange juice over my brother's head. The sticky liquid was dripping down his face and soaking into his shirt. He looked confused and upset, trying to wipe the juice from his eyes with his sleeve. But what made it worse was that she was laughing. This woman was actually giggling while my disabled brother sat there covered in juice, not understanding what had just happened to him. I could see some guy with a camera hiding behind a tree about 50 feet away, recording everything. I helped the elderly lady finish crossing the street as fast as I could, then walked straight toward the woman. With every step, I felt my anger building. This wasn't just some accident or misunderstanding. This was a deliberate attack on someone who couldn't defend himself. The woman noticed me approaching and her laughter died in her throat. I guess my expression made it clear I wasn't in a joking mood. By the time I reached her, she had backed up against the bench where my brother was still sitting. Karen started panicking and tried to explain that it was just a prank for her social media channel. She kept insisting it was harmless content that her followers would love. I told her I didn't care if she was filming for the president because she had just assaulted my disabled brother. She argued back that it wasn't assault, just juice, and that it was harmless entertainment for her audience. She was still trying to justify what she'd done, like dumping liquid on a stranger was perfectly normal behavior. I could see her cameraman starting to move closer, probably thinking he was about to get some great footage of me losing my temper. I warned her that she had picked the wrong person to mess with today. Then I reached out and grabbed her cameraman by his shirt collar. The guy was probably 6 inches shorter than me and looked like he'd never seen the inside of a gym. When I lifted him up, his feet barely touched the ground. His camera fell and clattered on the pavement. The cameraman pleaded for me to put him down, claiming they were just making content. I told him that his content had just become assault on a disabled person. I set him down harder than necessary, and he stumbled backward, nearly falling over. Karen decided she'd had enough. She started running down the street like her life depended on it, screaming at the top of her lungs for help. She yelled that some crazy man was attacking them and that someone should call the police. Her screaming was so loud that it caught the attention of two police officers who were walking their beat about a block away. They came jogging over to see what all the commotion was about. Karen ran straight to them, pointing at me and talking so fast I could barely understand what she was saying. Karen frantically told the officers that I had just assaulted her friend and grabbed him while threatening them for no reason. One of the officers asked her to slow down and explain exactly what had happened. Before I could say anything, several people who had witnessed the whole thing started speaking up. There was a mom with her two kids, an older gentleman walking his dog, and even a teenager who had been skateboarding nearby. The mom explained that Karen had dumped juice all over the boy in the wheelchair for no reason and was laughing about it too. The teenager confirmed he saw the whole thing and said Karen was filming it like it was some kind of joke, while I was just protecting my brother. The old man said he had been watching from across the street and that Karen started the whole thing while I was just helping him cross the street when it happened. The first officer walked over to my brother who was still trying to clean juice off his face and clothes. The second officer started questioning Karen and her cameraman about what had really happened. The officer asked Karen if she was telling him that she randomly threw juice on a disabled person for a social media video. Karen tried to defend herself by saying it wasn't like that and that it was called a prank for entertainment. She insisted that people do this stuff all the time online. The officer explained to her that what she was describing was assault, and that she couldn't just pour liquids on random people without their consent, especially not vulnerable individuals. The officers spent about 10 more minutes gathering statements from all the witnesses. Every single person who saw what happened told the same story. Karen had initiated everything by attacking my brother, and I had only responded to protect him. Karen protested that the whole situation was ridiculous because it was just a harmless prank. She argued that you couldn't arrest someone for spilling juice. The first officer corrected her by explaining that they could actually arrest someone for assault, which is what she had committed. He added that since she targeted someone with a disability, that could make this a hate crime. Karen's face went completely white when she heard that. Her cameraman wasn't looking too good either. The officers put both of them in handcuffs, while Karen kept protesting that it was all just a misunderstanding. Karen complained that this was going to ruin her career because she had 2 million followers who were going to cancel her. The officer told her she should have thought about that before she decided to assault innocent people for views. When they were leading Karen and her cameraman to the police car, she turned back to yell at me one more time. She threatened that this wasn't over and that her lawyer was going to sue me for everything I was worth. I told her good luck with that since she was the one going to jail. After they drove away, I sat down next to my brother and helped him clean up the last of the sticky juice from his hair. He was quiet for a while, but then he looked up at me with a small smile and thanked me for having his back like always. I told him that's what big brothers are for. We never did make it to the park that day, but it didn't matter. My wife has been going through a tough patch at work. Her boss makes unreasonable demands, and she puts in 12-hour days just to keep up. She barely has time for herself anymore. A few weeks ago, she mentioned this dress she'd been eyeing online for months. It wasn't crazy expensive, but we'd been saving up for our emergency fund, so she kept putting off buying it. Last week, I decided to surprise her and ordered it as a little pick-me-up gift. She had no idea it was coming. The package was supposed to arrive today via delivery service, and it required a signature. The tracking updated this morning saying it would be delivered between 1 and 3 p.m. Perfect timing since I had the day off and could be home to receive it. My wife and I did our usual morning workout together before she headed off to another long day at the office. I had some errands to run but made sure to be back home by noon to wait for the delivery. Around 12:30 p.m., I decided to hop in the shower since I still had at least 30 minutes before the delivery window. I was barely 5 minutes in when I heard the doorbell ring. The driver was early. No problem though. I quickly buzzed him into the building through the intercom and threw on my bathrobe, still dripping wet. I figured I'd just sign for the package, then finish my shower and toss the wet robe in the dryer. Simple enough. But then nothing happened. I stood by my apartment door for 10 minutes, listening for footsteps or a knock. Maybe he had other deliveries in the building, or maybe he was having trouble finding my unit number. Our building can be confusing for first-time visitors. Then my phone buzzed with a text notification. I looked down and couldn't believe what I was reading. Delivery attempted. Package could not be delivered because recipient was not home. I was furious. I ran downstairs in my flip-flops and bathrobe, water still dripping from my hair. The delivery truck was already gone. I called the customer service number right away, expecting to get stuck in some automated phone tree for 20 minutes. A human picked up right away. I explained to him that I just got a notification saying my package couldn't be delivered because I wasn't home, but I was definitely home and had even buzzed the driver into the building. He apologized and asked for my tracking number so he could look up my account. After I gave him the number, he told me he could see the issue in their system. The driver had marked it as customer not available, but the notes showed that he did gain building access, which didn't make sense. He said he would try to contact the local depot to see if they could get it re-delivered that same day. I told him I'd really appreciate that because my wife was expecting this package and she'd been having a rough time lately. He said he understood and asked me to hold while he made some calls. I waited on hold for about 15 minutes while he worked on it. When he came back, he sounded frustrated and apologized again. The driver had already finished his route for the day and wouldn't be able to come back. However, he offered me several options for the next day. He went through the list. They could attempt delivery again between the same time window. I could pick it up from their facility across town, or they could deliver it to a neighbor who would be home. I decided to wait and see if they could just re-deliver it normally the next day. But a few hours later, I got another call saying the same driver would be on the route, and there was no guarantee the same thing wouldn't happen again. That's when I figured out what really happened. Our building's elevator has been broken for the past week, and there's been a repair crew working on it every day. My apartment is on the 3rd floor. This lazy driver walked into the lobby, saw the maintenance crew and the out of order sign, and decided that 2 flights of stairs was too much work, so he just turned around and left. When my wife got home that evening, I had to tell her what happened. Her face just fell and she said she was really looking forward to wearing the dress this weekend. I promised her I would make sure we got it tomorrow, and she said it was okay, but I could tell she was disappointed. It wasn't okay though. She'd been looking forward to this one small thing, and some entitled driver couldn't be bothered to walk up 2 flights of stairs to do his job. That's when I came up with my plan. I texted around to some neighbors and found someone who could be home all day to accept packages. My upstairs neighbor on the 8th floor said she'd be happy to help out. The next morning I called customer service back and told them I'd like to arrange for my package to be delivered to a neighbor instead. They asked for the apartment number and I gave them 8F. They said they'd update the delivery instructions. I didn't mention that the elevator was still broken. Management had sent out another email that morning saying repairs wouldn't be finished until next week at the earliest. The next day I got a text notification that the package had been successfully delivered. My neighbor texted me a few minutes later saying she got my package, but the delivery guy looked pretty winded when he got up there and was not happy about the stairs. When I went upstairs to collect the package, my neighbor filled me in on more details. She told me that the delivery man was sweating so much by the time he reached the 8th floor and kept complaining about the elevator being broken. He kept asking why she couldn't meet him downstairs instead. She told him she was busy and couldn't leave her apartment, which didn't make him very pleased, but he handed over the package and got her to sign for it. I thanked my neighbor and took the package back to my apartment. When my wife got home that evening, I surprised her with it. She was confused at first since she thought the delivery got messed up, but I told her I worked it out and asked her to try it on. She opened the package and her whole face lit up when she saw the dress. She tried it on and looked absolutely beautiful. For the first time in weeks, I saw her genuinely smile. She told me she loved it and thanked me for making this happen. I told her she was worth climbing a few extra flights of stairs for. The lazy driver who couldn't be bothered to walk up 2 flights to do his job properly had to climb 8 flights the next day because of his own laziness. My husband has worked at Sainsbury's for years, And one of the few perks is the staff discount. When you're trying to stretch every penny in this economy, that 20% off can make a real difference. When I needed a new laptop for my freelance writing work, it made sense to buy it from his store. The thing is, I'm not great with technology. I'm 43 going through menopause, and computers aren't exactly my strong suit. My husband picked out what he thought would work for me, but after using it for a week, I realized it was complete rubbish. The screen was too small, the keyboard felt weird, and it kept freezing up when I tried to run multiple programs. Since I work from home doing content writing for various clients, I need something reliable that won't make me want to throw it out the window. My husband was working that day, so I figured I'd pop in during my lunch break and sort out an exchange. The electronics section at our local Sainsbury's isn't huge, but they usually have decent staff who know their stuff. When I walked in, there were two young lads working the department. One was helping someone at the customer service desk, and the other was restocking some phone accessories. I waited until the restocking lad finished what he was doing and approached him with my laptop bag and receipt. I explained that I'd bought the laptop last week, but it wasn't quite right for what I needed, and asked if I could exchange it for something different. The assistant was lovely, probably around 19 or 20, with that eager-to-help attitude that you don't see much anymore. He said of course he could help and asked to see my receipt so we could look at what options I had. We walked over to where they kept the laptops on display, and he started explaining the different models they had in stock. I was asking questions about memory and processing speed when a woman appeared next to us. She asked the assistant if he could help her find a phone charger. The lad looked at me, then back at her, clearly a bit uncomfortable. He told her that he was currently helping me, but there was another member of staff at the desk who could assist her. She apologized and wandered off without any fuss. I gave the assistant a smile to let him know it was fine. These things happen in retail, and he'd handled it perfectly. We continued our conversation about laptop specifications when another woman walked up to us. She told the assistant that she needed help with tablets and wanted to know which one would be best for her daughter. Now, I've worked in customer service myself in the past, so I understand that people don't always notice when staff are already occupied. But this woman had clearly seen that he was in the middle of helping me. The assistant looked even more uncomfortable this time. He apologized and explained that he was currently serving me, but there was another colleague at the customer service desk who could help her with tablets. But instead of walking away like any reasonable person would, she crossed her arms and planted her feet on the ground. She said that it would only take a minute and she just needed a quick recommendation. That's when something inside me snapped. Maybe it was the hormones, maybe it was the stress of deadlines, or maybe it was just that I'd had enough of people thinking they could push their way to the front of the queue. I looked directly at her and asked her in my sweetest, most innocent tone what made her more important than me. The words came out politely, but anyone with half a brain could hear the warning underneath. She stood there for a moment, clearly not expecting to be challenged. She repeated that it would only be a minute. I dropped the sweet act entirely and asked her again what made her more important than me. My voice was calm but stern, and I maintained eye contact while waiting for her answer. She started spluttering and looking around, hoping someone might rescue her from this awkward situation she'd created for herself. The assistant pointed toward the customer service desk again and confirmed that there really was someone there who could help her. She huffed and puffed like she was personally offended by basic customer service etiquette, then walked off. I could see her shooting dirty looks back at us. The moment she was out of earshot, the assistant started giggling. He told me that was brilliant and the best shutdown he'd seen working there, though he admitted he was a little bit scared of me now. I burst out laughing and gave him a huge smile, telling him not to worry because I only bite rude people. He laughed even harder at that, and the rest of our transaction went smoothly. He helped me find a laptop with a bigger screen and better processing power that was perfect for my work needs. The whole exchange process took about 10 minutes, and he even threw in a laptop sleeve for free since I was getting the staff discount anyway. When we were finishing up the paperwork, I noticed Karen hovering near the tablet display, still shooting looks in our direction. She'd apparently been served by the other assistant but was taking her sweet time browsing. probably hoping to witness some kind of comeuppance for my behavior. When the assistant handed me my new laptop, he made sure to speak loudly enough for her to hear. He thanked me for being so patient and said it was refreshing to deal with someone who understood how customer service works. I thanked him for his help and walked past Karen on my way out. She was still standing there looking sour, clutching a basic tablet that probably cost twice what she wanted to pay. I gave her my biggest, brightest smile and cheerfully told her I hoped she found what she was looking for. Her face went completely blank with confusion. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.